Yes.
If you're standing, like, right here where the speakers are with
Okay.
the microphones,
Uh-huh.
it's worse.
It works.
You need to be like this way or this way.
So I need to be
Go this way.
go this way, behind the microphone. That better? Is that better?
Either on the stage or right in front of it.
Okay. I'm not really good at being on the stage. I'd rather stand down here because we're going to talk a little bit about all this stuff. You know, just real quick, I've been doing buy here, pay here for 30-something years. And I built dealerships and hired everybody and created the operations and set up all the software, bought all the inventory, created the shops, wrote all the processes, ran it for a little while, and then somebody get tired of paying me and I'd go do another project and build another store. So I put stores in four different places, 3 different states, and since then I have ran as a fractional COO, fractional finance company manager, that ran operations for other people on short temporary things to help them fix their operations. And to this day, I audit dealerships every month just about where the owner can't figure out what's wrong, what's the problem is, and I'll go in and help them kind of determine what's going on, what I think, what would I do if it had my name on it, and just try to give them some good ideas. And I have, said you need to get rid of this guy, you need to fire that guy, that kind of thing to get down into those conversations. So anyways, that's where all this kind of comes. But all these years, we've been selling cars and collecting loans just like everybody else, but we studied it a long time ago, back in the late 90s, before the turn of the century, and then right after that, we did a lot of studying when I was involved with an operation in Dallas that had thousands and thousands of accounts over 16 years, and so we studied it and kind of changed our processes, and I just sort of kept using that idea. Let's just keep kind of looking at the process and what's the best way to do this to have the most success. And so doing collections differently, and I went the wrong way. I learned how to do this, but I don't. So I call it quality over quantity. So I go into, at this point like this, right now I have 7 different dealership groups that I work with their collection staffs every week. I'm looking at their numbers, I'm reviewing their notes, I'm having calls with their collectors every week. I've probably been in 150 dealerships in the last couple of years. I work for AutoMaster Systems, which is a DMS. So I go in with AutoMasters to help do the conversion to their software, and I work with the collection staff. This is how you do your job, this is the best way. So I'm talking to collectors constantly and dealing with those situations. One of the big things that I notice when I'm talking to the collectors is, the first question, I guess, that kind of comes up is, what do? We can't get a hold of anybody. And so we have conversations about some of the newer ways of making contact with customers. If you're on BlitzPay, you can send out texts and emails. There's some talk about AI going on, and I know a couple of dealers that I worked with that are using some AI now. And so there's some different things that you can do, but I'm old school, before the turn of the century. I want to call people, I want to talk to them and work out something. It's hard to make an arrangement with a customer that you're not talking to. You're trying to text with them and they don't really want to text back and forth. They don't, some of them use email, and so you can but it's really about calling and talking to them or getting them on the phone, getting them to call you. So how do we achieve some more work? Because so many collectors I've hired, I've had working for me, that kind of thing, or I go in and I deal with them. How many calls a day do I have to make? I want successful calls. I don't want 100 calls a day, but there's a lot of places that require you got to make 100 calls a day. That's not really effective because you're not going to be able to have any discussion with anybody if you have to make 100 calls a day. So how do we get past that? So don't try to call everybody. And so I have boiled it down to a list, which I'll show you in a little bit, where we use a targeted list every day to call different groups of people and try to work through them further. Let's call them, they don't answer, let's call their mom, let's call their job, let's call the cosigner, let's look them up on social media, spend a little more time trying to see if you can make contact with the customer some way. And so But in order to do that, it's got to be okay to work a smaller group. And so, so that's one of the things that we try to do. Don't call everybody, don't require they call everybody, let's work the groups. And this program that we're having, that I'm going through, I've probably been working with this for about 15 years, and I have gone into different dealerships around the country, and we've instilled this, and they go from I can't get out of the 60s on Friday night to 85% on Friday night. So I know that it works. It's just a matter of everybody that's involved in the operation understanding and then working with it and monitoring it. So the next thing is whenever you talk to a customer, when your collectors are talking to a customer or getting a chance to get involved with them, is get the money. It's amazing to me how collectors will get on the phone, customer says, I can't pay till next Friday, and they go, okay, so you're going to pay next Friday, okay, thank you very much, click. And that's the whole call. And it's just over and over and over again. And so you have to, I say you have to, have the collectors have to ask for the money every time. Whatever they owe, ask for the whole amount and don't say nothing else. It's the same you do in sales. You know, you tell the customer this is the deal, this is the payment, and then you just do a silent close. Well, it's kind of the same thing with collections. You owe us $350, we're going to be able to get that today, and don't say nothing. And see what the customer, let the customer talk you out of needing that whole $350. And if you do not get, they say I can't do that, then you're still asking for some more money. Ask for the money. Keep asking for how much can we get out of them, and then I have to have a plan before I hang up. That's another thing that I have. The customer saying, I'm going to pay you next Friday is not a plan. You know, I need to know when somebody tells the collectors that I deal with a lot, if the customer says, I can't really pay you that today, the first thing that I want the collector to say is, oh my goodness, are we in trouble on this account? Are we going to be okay? Oh yeah, you know, whatever it is, and talk to them about, but start the conversation with, are we in trouble? Are we going to have a problem? And to get them to talk and say, no, it's going to be okay, my kid was sick, or whatever the excuse is. But asking for the money and not taking the one answer no as to be the it. Let's go into how much can you do? I need you to give me some. So then the next thing that I discover when I'm in places is the collectors don't have any confidence in what they're saying to the customers, because the owner's looking at his borrowing base or whatever it is that's controlling his thinking. The collectors are working on a program. I know we're supposed to repossess the car if we don't get paid within 30 days. When then they get to that point, they're telling the customer, you know, we're going to have to escalate. We're going to have to get the car. We're probably going to have to do something. And then the owner goes, well, we probably already repossessed enough cars this month, so why don't we just hold off on that? You just pulled the teeth right out of your collector, and so they have no credibility now. And so I run into that quite a bit. And so I think you said it just a few minutes ago. Have a program that you can be comfortable with, fairly comfortable with, and stick to it. I'm going to show you some numbers from other dealers here that pretty steadily, either 2 payments or 14 days, some of them 25 days, but that's it. They stop. The collector knows that there's a wall, that you run into that wall, we're probably going to pick up your car. And they can confidently say that because that's what's going to happen. Because when it's time to repo, it's time to repo. Let's repo the car. It can actually help get some cars back. And so the number one thing that I have done, that I have seen done, that I have asked people to do, and what I do when I'm working with collection staffs is I'm going over the notes. You know, just there's a million examples. One dealership that brought me in, they couldn't get themselves out of the 70s on being current account, talking current accounts, because that's the way AutoMasters looks at it, but couldn't get out of the 70s Friday night. We got to get out of the 70s, get into the 80s at least. And so their goal was, can we get to 10% delinquent, 90% current on Friday night? And doing what I'm going to show you guys, we got there in 3 weeks. And so, but the way that I get the most effect is by reviewing notes with the collectors as a group even with the manager or the owner involved in the group. And go through the notes from yesterday and talk about why did you say that? What was that about? What was the customer say? It would be amazing how many times that I would talk to a collector about a note about a customer telling me there's a problem, they can't pay till next Friday. And I'm looking at the note and I'm going, okay, well, why? Well, the collector immediately starts telling me a whole bunch more about the whole story. And it's like, okay, great. You know all this stuff, but nobody else knows that it's not in the notes. And so I don't know how many times grandma's died. I can't tell if you're not putting it in the notes, so we can't call, and frankly, you can't call bullshit on it if they tell you that again. Or if the collector left and now there's somebody else working the account and they get the same set of stories. You know, I can't do it, I don't. And so if it's not in the notes, didn't happen, and so I'm really preaching about the notes, but the more important thing is to have these conversations with the collectors once a week to make sure that they know what's going on with their list of accounts. And I like cradle to grave, assigning accounts, but not everybody does that. But the bottom line is when I say somebody's name that's really high up on the list, they know immediately what's going on. They can tell me what's going on. And then I can go through the notes and see, you know, why did we say that? Why did we let them slide on this? How come you waived their CPI or whatever happened? And the owner being on the phone will be, we don't say that to people. Yeah, you do. Here it is 500 times saying it to the people. And so it would wake up the owner to what's being said. And honest to goodness, everybody, that's probably the number one thing that's wrong with a whole lot of the collection operations is nobody knows what's actually happening in the collection operation. Down in the weeds. And so the collectors are just saying whatever they can say to get some results and then repossess the car once they're allowed to do that. And so working with the collectors every week and putting a spotlight on what they're saying and having discussions, coaching type discussions with them about, well, we probably ought to look at saying this or let's do something a little bit different. Help them understand what's on your mind as an owner. What is the rules that we're going to go by and what's the end of the road? And listen, y'all, this is interactive. Raise your hand if you want to ask questions. I'm kind of deaf, so talk loud, but if you want to ask questions or bring up anything, go ahead. So, doing a good job. Current accounts versus recency. So this is one thing that I look at real quick when somebody calls me up and they want me to come help with their collection department. And so I'm going to go into the system and I'm going to look at their system. So current accounts, what am I looking for? I like 85 to 90% current. Most dealers are trying to, they tell me they want to be 90%, 10% delinquent. And that's a stretch. That's pretty hard to do. Yeah.
Do you go based off of Friday or does any day?
Mostly I'm just looking at Friday night. Most people collect most of their money on Friday night. I just try to look at Friday night. I try to bonus collectors on Friday night so that we can have, equal, and give them the whole week to work it out with the customers. So somewhere between 85 and 90% current is the goal. I ran all those different dealerships and all those different places, and we always kind of targeted 85, 86%. So, but if you can get to 90, that's pretty good. And I'm talking about $1 one day. Open repossessions that you haven't charged off yet. Same thing. All part of that list. So partial payments, I heard some conversation about that earlier. Partial payments is a big part of the business. We're going to have to do partial payments. The question is how many? And somebody said something about how many do you allow a customer? Well, that depends on what's up with the customer. What are they telling you? How's your relationship with them? What are you hearing from them? Where are you at with the car deal? You're going to have some partial payments. What I don't want to have is where your recency gets way out of whack with your current accounts. So what that means is 85 to 90 on current accounts, recency 93 to 98%. To me, those are good ranges to be in. If you see, I've seen plenty of places that were 68% current on Friday night, but their recency is 98%, and they're all excited about how happy they are with that. Well, that means that they're taking tons of partial payments on customers. And so they keep doing that. They keep taking the partials. The customers start to expect you to take partials. And then you're just going to end up picking up the car and your cash flow's down. You're not getting as much money from the car as you should, and they just keep taking parcels. And if nobody's calling them on it, then they're going to keep taking parcels. They were talking earlier about attitudes and things like that about employees. Employees will, and I'm talking about sales, collections, the service department, the technicians, all of them, they're going to do what it takes to keep you from griping at them. And they're going to stop right there. So if you're not managing them on a regular basis, your employees are going to stop. If they get off track and nobody says nothing, they're going to stay off track because it's easier. Whatever it is they're doing or what they believe is the best way, the way they like to do it, if you don't keep them on your path, they're going to go wherever they want to go because nobody's stopping them.
Gene, will you go into what recency is for you if you don't know that? That's a great.
Okay, well, recency is what's the 93% of your customers have paid you money in the last 30 days. Okay, you could have 10,000 customers and get $10,000 and put $1 on every account, you got 100% recency. So recency just means you're getting money from your customer against their account. But if you have recency and current accounts that are, pretty good percentages. I got a dealer I'm going to in Alabama in about 10 days, and his current accounts are 82 to 84%. His recency is 82 to 84%. And so that's kind of an unusual situation for me, but that's because he doesn't allow partial payments at all. And so what's happened, because you're not being flexible at all, only about 85% of his accounts have paid him money in the last 30 days. I'd be getting the rest of those cars, or what does those conversations look like? I'll have to get into that conversation. More often I go into places, like I said, and they're 68, 69, 70% current on Friday night, but their recency is 98% was because they took $20, $25, got a CPI payment, whatever they got from the customer, and told the customer, you can pay double next week, without really knowing what's going on or getting a plan, And so that's, again, part of working with the collectors and making sure they understand what they're supposed to say, what you want them to say, and where's the end of the road. So partial payments are a part of our business. You're going to be 85 to 90% if you're really doing pretty good. Current accounts, because you've got those people, those cars that are repoed, cars that are wrecked, and you haven't closed the loan yet, and people that are paying some partial payments because it just made sense. It's what they needed to do. But we have to know through working through what they're doing, what are they putting in the notes, what are they saying to customers. We have to know that they're making good decisions when they're talking to them. And just having a body, sitting in a chair, talking to whoever's on the list and finding out what's going on, trying to call them, that isn't going to work. Obviously, it doesn't work. We need people that do understand what we need them to do and to not be afraid to make the calls and can have that conversation, like a good salesman almost, but have that conversation about what's going on, why, are we in trouble, what are we going to do, how are we going to get out of this problem, get past this. So that's doing a good job. So I got some examples to show you. This is a dealership that I deal with. And so Miss Castillo here on Friday night, this was about 3 weeks ago, 85.621 current. Yaya was 88.197. Her last name's Duporte, but they call her Yaya. And if you'd listen to her talk, you'd call her Yaya too. 88.197%, and then down here, Miss Sandra's her name, 90.492%. Current accounts, 16 to 30, 1. 16 to 30, 1. 16 to 30, 2. And I've started working with this group right around the first of the year, same thing, 68%, 69% current on Friday night. And they had made several changes over the last 18 months before that, and we finally settled on what they were going to do. And so, was it last week? I think it was the week before last. Miss Yaya hit 90, and Sandra's her name. She was at 93% Friday night. And so this is right now. This is happening just in the last few days. That's their numbers on their accounts. And so, and yes, they have starter interrupts, but they don't use them on a trigger. They just use them on occasion when somebody's just not cooperating or they broke that second promise or whatever it was. But they're using them to effectively. So, so here's another set of, there's 4 different groups here. And again, it's mostly just to show y'all, like this is a 553 account portfolio, 85.5% current. This is at the close of business on Friday night, 93.3% recency. And so, again, just a couple of weeks ago. And so then this other one's 910 accounts, 85.6% current, 96.5% recency. And I heard somebody, y'all talking about inventory a little while ago, $4,266. That's the average total cost of car on that portfolio, 900-something account. So you can get them. They sell 60 to 70 cars a month, and you can get those cars. They don't have any advertising either. So the next one was 392, 91.3% current, 96.7% recency. And, same thing, just working. They don't have starter interrupts. This account, 2,530 accounts on the books, 94.4% current, 98.8% recency. And so, and this account, this is a big portfolio, and it's very consistent. Probably got I call her the GOAT of collection management, is the lady that runs that department. But all of those, this one on the end down here, they don't ever get to 2% charge-offs at the end of the month. They never get over 2%. It's always under. And so same thing here about 2. The 910, they run somewhere around 1.7, 1.8 pretty consistently. And down on the end, it runs about 2, 2.2. So that's another important factor when I'm talking about 85% current, 95% recency, but what's the charge-off rate? If you're only charging off 1.5, 2, maybe 2.5, then those numbers are working pretty well. Yeah, Mike? What's that? Well, I don't really know exactly what you mean. I'm talking about dollars. They're charging off so many dollars. Okay, they're charging off a certain percentage of dollars against the dollars of the portfolio. So I'm monitoring and checking those numbers so we can keep a track for them. And yes, in the last, since school started, mid-August into right now, about this time, everybody kind of clicked up a little bit on their charge-off and their repo. They're repoing a few more cars. But I put that down to the combination of things that we're running into. And I'm asking them all the time, what are y'all hearing? What do y'all think? And so, a little bit of deportation, a little bit of work authorization. The guys in Iowa ran into a big problem with work authorization, which you would think of Iowa. But, the Tyson and some big companies up there, if you didn't have all current work authorization, they let you go, and they had huge numbers of people they had to let go, and that affected the buy here, pay here. But even then, it still didn't throw them over 2%. Maybe I think it was right around 2%. But interest rates slowing, being too high, so there's no construction going on, no expansion of businesses. School starting always affects it. Labor Day weekend affects it. If it's Miller time, it ain't car payment time. And so, so those things all affect getting our money. And then you got to think about it, because Labor Day's over. Okay, Labor Day's over, but they still got to go a couple more weeks to get paid again before they're going to actually be able to help you get caught up. And so again, that comes into partial payments and understanding what's going on. And if you've had good conversation with your customers, you kind of got a good idea about that. Am I doing okay on time? So when is enough? This is a big conversation that I have. How far delinquent is enough? And are you consistent when it's time to repossess? This is important. Again, it goes back to the confidence of the collectors on the phone. They know if they tell the customer, you're going to be driving the Nikes if you don't get me this money, that's what's going to happen. And so how far is delinquent enough? 2 payments? I mean, I talk to a lot of dealers that 2 payments are pretty good. Nowadays, most dealers are biweekly. The ones I see are mostly all biweekly. So 2 payments, you're getting close to 30 days out. I have a couple of dealers that I deal with that have borrowing base, and they don't want to get to 30 days out. So okay, let's use 25 days. That's far as we're going to go. And the collectors know that. And so the collectors can articulate that to the customers. And I like to have collectors actually go in and talk to customers at closing, if it's physically possible, to go into the closing and say, I'm here to help you, I want to be with you, you know we can do service, you call me if you have any problems, but I'm going to have to, collect this account, we got to get paid. And so I've even helped with collector scripts. One of the best things to say is that contract does not say pay when you want to or pay when the car's driving. It says pay every other Friday. And just remind customers of that. So 2 payments, maybe that's far enough. I would not want accounts to go beyond 2 payments. And if they're weekly, I still don't want them to go beyond 2 payments. If they're monthly, I don't want them to go 10 days late on monthly.
So technically 2 payments on 15 days.
Well, you said that. And that is what before you said that. And a lot of dealers, I say that's probably a good spot to be. But 2 payments, 15 days. And here's the other caveat to that. I'm sorry, that's not it. But the other caveat to that is it doesn't matter if we're talking to them or not. It doesn't matter. I've heard this forever. Well, we're communicating with them. We're trying to work with them. Work with them within 2 payments. And be flexible and try to help them. And there's going to be exceptions where I had a deal go a full year beyond how long it was actually contracted for, but the child got leukemia and they had to go back and forth to Little Rock, Arkansas from where we were at. Some of that makes sense, but not a whole lot. We're not Red Cross Motors and we're not going to give this out or you're not going to drive this car for free. So, no insurance, and this is something that we wouldn't repossess a car because they didn't have insurance. 50% of the loans didn't have insurance. Now CPI has helped that a whole bunch and I'm a big advocate for that. But they get 2 payments and they got no insurance, they certainly are not keeping that car. Or nowadays, of course, if they show up without any insurance or you get a cancellation on their insurance, if you're even letting them get their own insurance, just put CPI on it. I hope you have CPI. There's very few dealers I run into now that do not, but it really does help. And it helps in the sales process as much as it helps in the collection process. So commercial use, I heard somebody else talking about that. What I have found is, honestly, very, very, very few of your customers come in and say, I'm going to work for Uber and I need to buy a car. No, they have a job at Firestone and they come in and they get your car so they can go to work for Uber. And that's when you find out they're working for Uber. And so your contract, I'm pretty sure just about everybody's contract has a clause in there that says no for no commercial use. Blow that up and put it on the wall. Blow it up and put it on a piece of paper and make them sign it so that you can do something after. If they start driving, well, I had to start driving Uber. I'm doing Uber Eats. I'm doing DoorDash. And so you just got to tell them, you're only going to be able to do that if, you bring in once a month, I see oil change done, and, we're going to track your miles through the GPS, and if you're running over 5,000 miles a month, we might have to pick this car because you're abusing it, and it's not to be used for commercial use, so now you're violating your contract. And see if you can't get them off of that if you can. But most people that are doing Uber driving didn't tell you they were going to be doing Uber driving when they bought it. So that might be a good time to try to pull it. But you got to set it up so that you can pull it because you told the customer up front and they signed off on it and you proved it to them that they were not to use that for commercial use. So they disconnect the GPS. That's another reason that could be for picking it up. That's why the GPS is in there. And if once you find out that the GPS isn't working, you need to do that kind of quickly because you've got the history there. Hopefully there's 2 or 3 addresses that they go to all the time where you can try to grab it. And then if the car gets impounded and then you go pick it up. But when is enough is about the payments mostly. And it is, picking up the car does not have to mean it's just over. I mean, it's really down to your relationship, what are the collectors saying, and how you may try to make contact afterward. I'll tell another quick story. A dealership in Tyler, Texas, 60 years old, maybe 65 years old by now. Grandpa started it, Dad took over, and now the son and the dad run it. And I was there. They have 2,800 accounts. When I was there, 5 collectors on the phone. And the 5 collectors have just real simple conversation. They're talking nice and easy. There's no real arguing. If you get to 11 days, there's going to be a late charge, and we will not be able to waive that. You understand? And they had kind of a bigger than usual late charge. They weren't really being compliant, but 65 years. And then, you know, ma'am, that if you let this car go further than that, we're going to pick it up at 20 days. And that was all they tell them. 18 days, they're delinquent 18, call them up and say, you're close to 20 days. We're going to pick this car up at 20 days. And they pick them up if they had to at 20 days. I have never seen so many people coming in every day, while I was there 8 days, every day to redeem cars. I'm so sorry, and redeeming cars. And so they just tried to keep it very calm. This is the rule, this is what happens, and you know this is what we're going to do. And 75% of their business was repeat and referral business, and everybody loved them. But they had picked that car up. So I know that, again, a very definite end of the road is a good thing to have. So, all right, so I'll get into the meat of this right quick. Collecting differently to be more effective. Biggest issues, making contact. Customers know that they owe you. They do. They're adults. Somebody said that. I read that somewhere. But they know that they owe you money. They just don't respond to you because they don't have anything to tell you. I went to the casino and I lost all my money, or whatever. And so calling different groups each day. And I'll show you that on the next slide. But Monday, we focus on low-hanging fruit. We're calling the 1 to 3 day delinquent customer, and that's all on Monday. And most of y'all, that's probably close to half of your accounts that are delinquent, especially if you've been doing this for a little while. Another thing that we found that's been effective is doing like marketing. And they call it multi-calling. You call the number, you get to the voicemail, you just hang up. Call the number immediately again, and oftentimes they'll answer the phone. I know if my wife calls me a second time, we're on it. And so, but that has been working. I've been asking the collectors, and they tell me that actually they've had some success with that. And if you guys don't have WhatsApp set up, you need to get WhatsApp set up because we're having a lot of luck contacting customers through WhatsApp. And if you don't know what it is, but it's a very good product to have online, and have a burner phone. And then text and email. So, back in the old days, we didn't have cell phones, but we actually had another phone sitting over here, a little Princess phone. If you couldn't get them on this phone, go over there and call them on that phone. And that would usually answer the phone. And things are different, and they block calls and all these new technologies and things. But multi-calling has been helping, and then texting and emailing, because a lot of customers like to text. But when you text and they respond, you want to know when you can talk to them on the phone. I can't make any arrangements with you by text. I need to talk to you. And no is a great answer. I can't accept a partial payment. I'm sorry. Oh, and that's another part of the conversation is, do you have your merchant servicer set up to only accept 100% of what is due on an account? 100%. If it's past due, the only thing the customer can pay online is 100% of what's due. Other than that, they got to call you. And so, all right, so let's go on to this. The daily schedule. And so Monday, 1 to 3 days, we're going to work the unpaid from the weekend, and it's really a lot of the accounts, but we really want to work them a bunch. Call every kind of way we can think of calling them, and see if we can't get that money before they spend it on something else. They probably already did spend it, but still, work the low-hanging fruit. I showed the collectors, y'all ended up at 69% on Friday night. If we can get a whole bunch of these Monday people on the phone and get them to pay, you start having Monday. I try to get Monday where it's in the 70s already, and then Friday it's going to be easy to get to 85%. But I try to show them the score. If we can start out Monday at a better number, we're going to end it, because on Friday, when you get down to Friday, you might be able to move your numbers 3 points on Friday, because a lot of the business, you got a lot of payments coming in, a lot of activity. They're not able to do as much work because they're taking calls and doing payments and dealing with things. But if we can get Monday closer to 70 when we start out, then we're going to be able to get to 85 by Friday. So Tuesday, we're looking at 5 to 18 day delinquent accounts. That's what they're showing up on the delinquency. Not nearly as many of them, but the same thing. We're going to try to call multiple things on every one of them. Let's try to call, and if they get through and they went through their list, run through it again. And if you still got time, go back to the Monday list and go through that again on Tuesday. Call the Monday list. So Wednesday, my granddaughter thought that was hilarious. But the 20 plus, that's skip day. This is something else. I go into dealerships and I talk to collectors, and they got this kind of a long list of 20 plus accounts that they're just not really doing anything. I look at the notes, they hadn't made contact in a month. It's not so much about trying to get the customer to pay, but about moving the ball. Let's get those cars off of the list. That's money sitting out there. If it's in impound, if it's at a police hold, if it's just wrecked and we're trying to settle insurance, let's take part of the day Monday, because usually it gets pretty short fairly quickly. It's not a really long list. But let's see if we can move the ball on any of those accounts that are over 20 days delinquent on Wednesday. And then let's go back to Tuesday and back to Monday at the end of the day on Wednesday. But try to move those accounts. Let's get them off the list. How can we get them off? Instead of ignoring them, let's spend a little time on them and get them off the list. So Thursday, 6 to 18 day accounts, again, we're trying to work the ones that are giving us the most trouble. Some of them we may have interrupted their car, we got chimes going or bells going or whatever we're doing. But we're working on these accounts to try to see if we can get some spend time on them. And then Friday, 1 to 14. That's the obvious people. 14 days out, they got paid 2 weeks ago, they probably get paid this Friday, and see if we can't get a bunch of them to get caught up on Friday as best we can. And then Saturday, I hope your collectors are not working all day Saturday, because it's really kind of a waste of money and a kind of a waste of time, and it's good for morale if you can get them off work. My collectors worked at 8 o'clock in the morning till noon. And 8 o'clock is very important to me. Of course, the old days, you're dialing the phone, they didn't have cells. You're getting the little girl to answer the phone. Okay, can you get your mommy for me? Well, she's asleep. Well, don't go tell her that I need to talk to her. Mommy! And so, but Saturday, everybody goes to do stuff. You know, when's the restaurant busy on Saturday for breakfast? 10, 11 o'clock. That's when they're going out. There's soccer games, baseball games, all that stuff. So there's not a whole lot of reason for collectors to be calling after about noon. But from 8 o'clock in the morning till about noon, we're calling one day late and broken promises. Again, we're working the low-hanging fruit that we should be able to get them. If we can get Monday to 70, 72% in the morning on Monday, then we're going to get to our number by the end of the week. And so this system has worked consistently over and over again in lots of places. So it just cuts down on how many customers they're required to call. They're not trying to work all the same people every day, and they can spend a little more time. I'm allowing them more time to work those customers and make those calls and try to get a hold of the references and all that, and just keep working through it. And when you get them on the phone, take the time to talk to them. Are we in trouble? Do we need to do something else? Are you going to be able to catch this account up? You know, we can't go too far. We get down to 25 days and they're going to be escalating it out of my hands. Let me help you. So, kind of a review, but sort of, but set a repo policy. All customers are picked up communicating or not at whatever that day is, for whatever works for you. 25 days, 2 payments, whatever it is. Whether they're talking to them or not, we're going to only go get to a certain point. Monitor activity. One of the best exercises, again, I talk about is once a week at least, sit down with the collectors together if you have more than one, and go through the list, not the whole list, but the bad part of the list, and talk about the accounts. I use an activity report out of AutoMaster. IDMS has an activity report. It doesn't say a whole lot, but at least you can see who they spoke to. Contact was made. If there's not a promise to pay right after that, I'm going to go look at that account. Why did you talk to them and we didn't make an arrangement? That's going to be always one of my biggest questions. Let's don't be talking to customers. We didn't get the money and we don't have an arrangement. Well, you know, they've broken promises in the past. Okay, in the note should say, I warned them, they've broken too many promises and I'm not going to be able to protect you beyond 25 days or whatever it is, but at least I know they spoke to them and told them that. But that's what I'm looking at when I look at an activity report is if they talk to the customer, there better be a promise to pay if we didn't get the money. Only collectors. This is another thing. Oops, go back. So only collectors. I have gone into lots of dealerships where the sales guys are making the collection calls or the lady in the back office is doing the collection calls. Really, I mean, I know that there's financial reasons and small operations and all of that, but if you can have a dedicated person that's working the accounts, that understands what they need you to, what you need them to do, what they need to do, keep them on collecting and let them work the collections, always be available to answer the calls. And this is another kind of a thing that I didn't put on here. I go into places, they pay me to come in and train. I go in to train, and this one's off this day, this one's off this day, this one's off this day, and this one's off this day, so we can never get consistency. So, I tell let's have them all come in every day. Their schedule is work Monday through Friday every day, but take off half a day in the afternoon once a week, and then they cover the half a day on Saturday. And that's their time off because we need consistency to work these customers. And I'm a cradle to grave. I want the collector to be responsible for her or his group of customers and know what's going on with them and be talking to them. So insurance and recovery. This is another thing that a lot of dealers will have the collectors responsible for dealing with insurance and dealing with recovery. And it takes a lot of time. I mean, I don't know how many of y'all tried to get a hold of an adjuster, but it takes a long time to try to get one of them on the phone. And then that adjuster quit. Now you got to deal with the new adjuster. So I try to get to a point where there's one person that's kind of the specialist on dealing with insurance and stuff and working on recoveries. And then repo review. This is something where I don't let collectors actually make the decision to repossess. They suggest, and somebody, the boss, the owner, whatever, reviews with them and talks about, okay, why are we doing that? Should we be doing that? We're at the 25 days. Well, then let's just pick it up where we're at 14 days and I can't get a hold of them. But somebody that's reviewing the accounts and not just letting the collectors just repo who they want, because that's the easiest way to get to current, 90% current. Just repo anybody that you don't want to deal with no more. And if there's nobody watching, then that's what's going to happen a lot of times.